Volume 3, Chapter 4 of Emma by Jane Austen. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. A very few days had passed after this adventure, when Harriet came one morning to Emma with a small parcel in her hand, and after sitting down and hesitating, thus began: "Miss Woodhouse, if you are at leisure, I have something that I should like to tell you, a sort of confession to make, and then, you know, it will be over." Emma was a good deal surprised, but begged her to speak. There was a seriousness in Harriet's manner which prepared her, quite as much as her words, for something more than ordinary. "It is my duty, and I am sure it is my wish," she continued, "to have no reserves with you on this subject. As I am happily quite an altered creature in one respect, it is very fit that you should have the satisfaction of knowing it. I do not want to say more than is necessary. I am too much ashamed of having given way as I have done, and I dare say you understand me." "Yes," said Emma, "I hope I do." "How I could so long a time be fancying myself—" cried Harriet warmly. "It seems like madness. I can see nothing at all extraordinary in him now. I do not care whether I meet him or not, except that of the two I had rather not see him, and indeed I would go any distance round to avoid him. But I do not envy his wife in the least, neither admire nor envy her, as I have done. She is very charming, I dare say, and all that, but I think her very ill-tempered and disagreeable. I shall never forget her look the other night. However, I assure you, Miss Woodhouse, I wish her no evil. No, let them be ever so happy together. It will not give me another moment's pang, and to convince you that I have been speaking the truth, I am now going to destroy what I ought to have destroyed long ago, what I ought never to have kept. I know that very well," blushing as she spoke. "However, now I will destroy it, and it is my particular wish to do it in your presence, that you may see how rational I am grown. Cannot you guess what this parcel holds?" said she, with a conscious look. "Not the least in the world. Did he ever give you anything?" "No, I cannot call them gifts, but they are things that I have valued very much." She held the parcel towards her, and Emma read the words, "Most precious treasures," on top. Her curiosity was greatly excited. Harriet unfolded the parcel, and she looked on with impatience. Within abundance of silver paper was a pretty little Tunbridge ware box, which Harriet opened. It was well lined with the softest cotton, but excepting the cotton, Emma saw only a small piece of court plaster. "Now," said Harriet, "you must recollect." "No, indeed, I do not." "Dear me! I should not have thought it possible that you could forget what passed in this very room about court plaster, one of the very last times we ever met in it. It was but a very few days before I had my sore throat, just before Mr. and Mrs. John Knightley came, I think the very evening. Do you not remember his cutting his finger with your new penknife, and your recommending court plaster? But as you had none about you, and knew I had, you desired me to supply him, and so I took mine out and cut him a piece, but it was a great deal too large, and he cut it smaller, and kept playing some time with what was left, before he gave it back to me. And so then, in my nonsense, I could not help making a treasure of it. So I put it by, never to be used, and looked at it now and then as a great treat." "My dearest Harriet," cried Emma, putting her hand before her face, and jumping up, "you make me more ashamed of myself than I can bear. Remember it! Ay, I remember it all now, except your saving this relic. I knew nothing of that till this moment, but the cutting the finger, and my recommending court plaster, and saying I had none about me. Oh, my sins, and I had plenty all the while in my pocket! One of my senseless tricks. I deserve to be under a continual blush all the rest of my life. Well," sitting down again, "go on, what else?" "And you had really some at hand yourself? I am sure I never suspected it, you did it so naturally." "And so you actually put this piece of court plaster by for his sake," said Emma, recovering from her state of shame, and feeling divided between wonder and amusement. And secretly she added to herself, "Lord bless me! When should I ever have thought of putting by in cotton a piece of court plaster that Frank Churchill had been pulling about? I never was equal to this." "Here," resumed Harriet, turning her box again, "here is something still more valuable. I mean that has been more valuable, because this is what really did once belong to him, which the court plaster never did." Emma was quite eager to see this superior treasure. It was the end of an old pencil, the part without any lead. "This was really his," said Harriet. "Do you not remember one morning— no, I dare say you do not. But one morning, I forget exactly the day, but perhaps it was the Tuesday or Wednesday before that evening, he wanted to make a memorandum in his pocket-book. It was about spruce beer. Mr. Knightley had been telling him something about brewing spruce beer, and he wanted to put it down; but when he took out his pencil, there was so little lead that he soon cut it all away, and it would not do, so you lent him another, and this was left upon the table as good for nothing. But I kept my eye on it, and as soon as I dared, caught it up, and never parted with it again from that moment." "I do remember it," cried Emma. "I perfectly remember it. Talking about spruce beer. Oh yes, Mr. Knightley and I both saying that we liked it, and Mr. Elton seeming resolved to learn to like it too. I perfectly remember it. Stop, Mr. Knightley was standing just here, was he not? I have an idea he was standing just here."